Welcome to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I'm David Fung, an executive leadership coach and seasoned people leader. This podcast is all about helping leaders grow, navigate challenges, and build high-performing teams with real stories, insights, and strategies you can apply today. Let's dive in.
It's the pull, the call, whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it, but it's listening to that and not saying, no, that's not for me. That's not, but your inner self within your soul, within your mind, whatever is in your heart, it's following that. Your mind may be saying this, but your heart and your soul is saying, nah, this is the door that you really want to start pursuing. And so that's the piece that I started listening to better.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. This morning, I am here with Mr. Charles Stevens. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, David. Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I admire your headset set up. You look like a air traffic controller.
Yep, looking the part.
Yeah. So maybe you can introduce yourself initially, but I am very interested in some of your background. You were a principal for many years at a high school, and
Yes.
Recently you jumped over to the world of leadership coaching. You're a Maxwell certified coach and everything, but I'm going to steal some of your thunder, but I'm going to give it back to you right now. So, yeah, introduce yourself, my friend.
Yeah, great. As you said, I'm Charles Stevens. I spent over 30 years in education. I actually got my start as a college basketball coach. I was a head women's basketball coach at then called Lynchburg College, now University of Lynchburg. Was there for a couple of years, and then transitioned into teaching and coaching in a high school.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting transition because that's not what I set out to do. But again, not to push my faith on people, but God had a different plan for me.
Yep.
And so for the next 30 years, or actually the next 15 years, I was a teacher, a coach. I taught mainly mass communications. I was a yearbook advisor, newspaper advisor, served as a basketball coach for 16 more years of doing that. Got into martial arts, did some martial arts training, became a third degree black belt, certified instructor, all that good stuff, but all in the realm of coaching. I love the coaching aspect of that. So that's what I enjoyed doing. Matter of factly, I even told my wife, I never want to go into administration. I love doing this.
Yeah.
And she always makes me eat those words. But then I saw the impact that I could have. And I had a conversation with a very trusted colleague and friend, and she was assistant superintendent at the time. And just said, if you want to have a greater impact, going into administration. And so I made that decision to go into administration. And then for the next 15 years, did administrative work, 3 years as an assistant principal, 12 years as a high school principal, but enjoyed the impact we could make.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it. I was still coaching people. I was coaching kids, coaching teachers, sometimes coaching parents.
Yep.
In that vein. And so made the challenging yet easy decision to retire and to try to go in a different direction to still be impactful with other people. Felt like I made a good impact in the school community where I served, basically 28 out of 30 years, and, wanted to add value to other people and helping them be impactful in their school communities or in their organizations as well.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had some points in your journey where you didn't want to do the next thing. And perhaps it's because of your perception of the next thing, administration.
Right.
In my world, it's going into leadership, quote unquote, right? Being a manager. There's perceptions of it. But what I find is the people who resist it probably the most initially become some of the best at it, because they're going in when they finally make that change. I want to go into administration. I want to become a principal. They go in for the right reasons. I guess, what was your thought process going from, one transition to another?
Sure. No, great question. Yeah, because for me, it was never about the money. Yes, there was an increase in pay in going that route, but for me, it was all about the impact. And to me, that's my goal as a leader is how can I positively impact the most people? And, I've talked to different people like, well, I'm going to teach for a few years and I want to go into administration because that's where the money is. Okay. That's all well and good for your motives, but there's also increased responsibility, increase in time. But for me, the risk was about making the impact, not about the income.
Yeah. The thing that grinds like at fingers on a chalkboard. I guess that's an appropriate analogy considering where you came from. Is when people come to me and say they're an individual contributor, they've rose the ranks as an IC, and then they say, "Hey, Dave, I want to go into leadership." And you ask why? Well, it's the logical next step. I go, how's it the logical next step? Well, because there's no more positions to go through. I can't be promoted anymore in where I am. Okay, but it's a fundamentally different job, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
how's it a logical like if you're basing on logic, it's not a logical next step. This is a new job. You're not getting paid much more than you're getting paid right now. Why is it logical? It's those are the folks who are just in it for the raw, absolutely wrong reasons. And they
I
don't know
agree.
why. Yeah. It's the folks like yourself. You're like, I no, I'm not doing this administration thing, right? I like being in the field. I like, whatever it is. Those you're going for the right reasons. And it sounds like you want to impact people. You want to help people,
Correct.
right? I guess how's that led you to where you are now? You're a Maxwell. I guess explain to folks like what a Maxwell certified coach is and what are you doing right now?
Sure. Like I'd indicated, like, as a school leader and so forth, I looked at it as I was always coaching people and so forth. But for me to transition to be able to continue to help coach other leaders be more effective in their roles, or help people grow or help aspiring leaders that wanted to go in different ways, I needed to grow in that skill set. Yeah,
Hmm.
I can sit down and have a coffee top conversation, with someone about my experiences and so forth. But what are the actual skill sets behind really helping someone go that route? And so I have been following John Maxwell for years. I've read a number of his books, still read a lot of his books. I've listened to podcasts of his every month for many years as well, and just again through lots of prayer and reflection, like that was just led to that next step, because that's where I could learn the skill sets to be able to transition into this role of coaching, training, and speaking in those particular arenas. And so, one of the things that I learned several years ago was that, as a leader, I've got to continue to grow myself. It's not like, okay, I'm the principal, I've made it. No, I've got to continue to find to grow myself. And one of the things I discovered was I can't just grow in the arena of educational leadership. I've got to grow in leadership of leading other people.
Hmm.
And so it's not just focused on that, it's about helping other people reach their potential.
Hmm.
And so for me to be able to do that in this new arena, I've got to continue to grow as well.
Yeah.
And so that's why I made that transition there, why I chose to go with the John Maxwell team and so forth, because of what additional things I could learn that I could continue to grow, because I can't grow others if I don't continue to grow.
What's the skills that you're trying to grow yourself into right now?
Again, for me, it's like I have my story of leadership and so forth, but everybody's story of leadership journey is going to be different. So I've got to learn from different people, because if I've only got my vein of leadership that I'm passing on to people, that's not going to be really beneficial to them.
Hmm.
So I've had to widen my scope to learn from other people how they had their journeys, learn the skill set of asking the right questions, how to listen attentively, for those specific things, to be able to then turn around and help someone else do that. I actually interviewed one of my former students. She graduated from our high school back in 2007. At the age of like 38 now, she's a CEO of a major hospital down in South Florida.
Hmm.
Well, I'd followed her journey over the years. I wanted to know what she had done to get there. And so I've been able to use parts of that story from what I learned from her to help other people. And so that's the piece that I needed to know more about, because again, my journey was only my journey, but there's so many other ways to be successful in leadership.
In your current journey, what are some of those new ways that you've discovered along the way?
That there is more than one way to lead.
Yeah.
It depends on the arena, it depends on the people you're leading and things like that. But I think what it does come down to is the communication pieces. The big discovery I've had is that in the, I'll say, the workforce now, is you got people that are in their 20s all the way up through their 80s. That's 6 decades of different experiences, different sets of wisdom, different communication styles, and things like that. And so you're navigating lots of different things when working with people with that wide variety of ages. And so you got to learn how to adapt, meet people where they are, and figure out how can I add value to them where they are and help them continue to grow forward to reach their potential. So it's being, I guess, more diversified in how we approach things
Yeah.
has been the biggest learning point for me.
Yeah. Uh, I adopted a team a number of years ago where, a lot of the people were much older than me, closer to retirement. In fact, a lot of them are, you know, I would say maybe a quarter of them are thinking that way, talking that way, and then there's the big middle where folks who are like late these early to mid 40s, kids are still relatively young or teenagers, and everyone's still figuring out that side of it. And then there's maybe another 10% that are like, okay, maybe we'll get married and maybe we'll have some kids one day. So that's not that's maybe like 2 decades, 2.5, 3 decades of people on my team. And the thing that made me most uncomfortable is what do I do with the folks who are like talking about retirement? And you said something there that just caught my ear. Like, I had a coach who said to me, Dave, what's the value that they bring with their experiences? Meet them where they are. And what I realize is that a lot of these folks are near that age. They bring a lot of wisdom, been there, done it. Here's the 50 jobs I've had before. I'm in this job right now, Dave, because I chose to do this.
Yes.
I don't have to do this anymore. And so how do you pull that passion out and share it with others? That's what I've found. And these are the people I tap on the shoulder and just do a gut check at times.
Yes.
Like we had a major layoff a few years ago, and one of the guys on my team, he called me that morning and he goes, "Hey Dave, I've been through this. I've been, did this for 3 decades. This is how I got through it." And he just gave me some unsolicited advice. He just called me, and he realized, yeah, Dave, this is my first time going through something so drastic, and he gave me some guidance right up front. So that was one of the best experiences I had in leadership. Someone just more more wisdom just offered it
Yes.
to me.
Yes.
So yeah. Um, I guess when you think about wisdom, what wisdom do you feel you can offer other people with all your years of experiences?
Sure. I think it's wisdom because I'll say, led in many different, even though it's mostly in the educational realm, I've led in many different arenas. Basketball coach, I was a certified martial arts instructor.
What kind of martial
Right.
arts? You mentioned that.
Taekwondo. It was through the American Taekwondo Association. It's a worldwide organization, but yeah, it was through Sangam Taekwondo.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I've been a vestry member of our church, which is sort of like an elder, depending on the type of church. So I've been in those capacities. I've just been in, wherever I've gone, I've tended to gravitate toward the leadership side of things.
Yeah.
And so I think pulling from the experiences and things that I've learned, even the mistakes that I've made from those experiences, and taking them to every step along the way of what have I learned that's going to help, the experiences I've had, how have what I learned going to help other people? How's that going to be beneficial? So it's taking the like I said, that wisdom, that knowledge that I've gained from different experiences, but it's sharing, like, here are the mistakes that I've made and here's what I learned from it, so that they can help glean something from that as well.
Yeah. What's what's one mistake that stands out right now that when you look back at it, it was great that it happened?
Well, there's probably quite many, but I'll say one is, as principals and so forth, you're hiring teachers year to year and so forth. So, and I was always one to like do my homework on everyone, but during the process and everything else. But we were kind of pushed for time on this particular hire,
Mm-hmm.
and so I relied on the another person who got a reference
Mm-hmm.
and said, "This is a good hire. Go with it." I said, "I trust you. Let's go for it," which I did. And I still trust the individual. And I think he meant well anyway. But it turned out not to be such a great hire. The person only lasted a year. And then when I followed up through a mutual colleague, well, if you would have just called me, I could have told you, like, this is not one that you want to go, because some things became evident pretty quickly.
Mm.
So that was kind of the eye opener there, is that stick to your process that you have in place. While other people are intentionally trying to help you, and depending on who they contact and what have you, the information was probably very valid, but you want to go to the one at the top, because other school leaders are not going to give you bad advice.
Yeah. 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 I had an experience like that years ago. I hired the wrong person, right? Went on the advice of one or two people I trusted, but my gut was saying something. And then but it paid off because recently, you know, I could have ended up in the same situation. I was in the same situation, but I trusted my gut. I was like, something didn't feel right here, right? And even though it came from trusted people, like, oh no, this person's great, and like something just not feeling right. And I dug in a little more, and I pushed hard too, right? Like when you have that feeling, like
You
you're
do.
not telling me something, so I pushed pretty hard, right? And
Yes,
and it was pretty much like, look, if people aren't going to be straight with me, it's a no, right?
absolutely.
And then the truth came out, and I'm like, okay, thank you for being honest with me, right? And so, those are good lessons that you learn along the way,
Yes,
right?
you do. Learn to trust your gut. It
Yeah.
doesn't steer you wrong.
What is speaking of trusting your gut, I guess when you think about when you think about like your leadership journey and all your experiences, like is there anything along the way that you felt like at the time it was so important? It was the most important thing in the world. We got to get this thing right. I can't sleep because of it. But now, with your ability to step back and look at the situation again, it probably wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, do you have something like that you can share?
Yes, absolutely. And it was one of those moments of, again, came from some reflection. We always recognize our student athletes that are going on to the collegiate ranks.
Yeah.
And as in the school division, is that we had four major high schools, and we had all agreed there are different points of the time of the year where you're going to do these things. And we have those athletes that are actually getting scholarships. And so a lot of times we would have just ceremonies for those getting scholarships, not just, okay, I'm going to another school not on scholarship, but doing that. But we had all agreed to, okay, this particular time frame, we're only going to do scholarship athletes. Well, there was one student athlete that was going to a Division III school and so forth, and we were going to do something at a later time, but parent was like, "Well, why can't we count?" I said, "Because this is what all of our schools agreed to."
Hmm.
And I was just sticking to that. And I stepped back, and we eventually, after some conversations with some higher ups and so forth, I'm kind of like, you know what? I was just a bonehead move on my part. What was the big deal? And so with some reflections of there, like she deserved that same shining moment. No, she may not be going to a major university, but these are also some of her friends. They're on the same team.
Hmm.
So why did I make such a big deal of that? And so I just learned to, like, you know what? Because other schools were like, they had kind of turned that corner too and decided, well, we decided not to do that. Well, she would have let me know because it would have made my decision easier. And I'm kind of like, you know what? But despite all of that, I should have been like, you know what? Let's just do it. And we ended up doing it anyway. But I had to go through, like, why did I do that? I was just trying to be so strict about what we were doing. But at the end of the day, we're in the kid business. Let's shine the light on kids.
Yeah. Well, so that begs the question then. You mentioned one time, like at the beginning, stick to your process, like in hiring, right? At the
Yes,
same time, you had a process here, and you stuck to it and it didn't work out. How, what advice would you give people around when do you know how do you know when you should stick to your guns around a process or, and such? And how do you know when you should be flexible, like in this
sure.
situation?
A great question. I think you look at each situation and base your decision on the merit of those situations. For me, in the world of education, is what's best for kids. Is this process that I've had in place for so long, is this still the best process that's going to still lead to the positive outcomes that we've been getting, or do we need to reevaluate? So I think it's something that I learned, especially from this situation as well, is each year kind of reevaluating the structures and systems we have in place, and are they really effective? Are they giving us the outcomes that we're seeking from these types of things? And just be humble enough to say, you know what, this is no longer relevant. We need to make some changes. So from like that situation, we all just decided we're going to do two or three signing ceremonies through the year, one in the fall, spring, depending on when they are, and it's everybody, not just separating them from those types of things. Because again, it's really what's best for kids, and it's not that, okay, you got a Division I scholarship, you got a Division III signing letter or whatever. Okay, you're still going to college to play a sport. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So why not just, do it all at once? So we changed those processes as well. And I think it's just you have to reflect year to year, or, whatever timetable you choose, to really look at the structures and things you have in place to see if they're really creating the outcomes that you desire from it. Are they effective? Are they in the best interest of your students or your employees or whatever the case may be?
So really going back to why are you doing this? What's best for the kids, right?
Absolutely.
Or it could be if you're a leader, what's best for your people,
Absolutely.
or what's best for your customer. What's your so it really sounds like you know, going back to like what's your North Star? What's your guiding light? Like who are you doing this for? Uh, and I'm focusing on this because I see too many people spinning. Like
Yes.
everyone will ruminate around things and everything, but when you're clear about who you're doing this for and why you're doing this, it becomes a very different thing, right? Like this one guy I was coaching, it was like it kept on ruminating around it, like all the 50 possibilities. And
Yes.
it comes back to why you're doing this and what's most important and who's most important here. And they'll answer it like, okay, so, and then, and
What's
then,
next?
yeah. So what's next then? It's like those little details you're worrying about. It actually doesn't matter. Right.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, like, have you ever considered doing a TED talk?
I have.
Huh?
That's how I ended up meeting Tara
Yep.
beforehand and so forth. And I've actually had some former teachers of mine, they're now retired, says, you ought to think about doing a TED talk because,
Yeah.
every monthly staff meeting, I tried to have some words of inspiration, especially that year we went through COVID.
Yep.
Because you're trying to keep the troops rallied for the
Oh
work
yeah.
that they're doing. And so they just said, you ought to think about doing that. So I have thought about it. Haven't moved in that direction yet, but it is on my bucket list to do.
So what's your gut feeling? If you had to talk about something, what would it be at a TED talk?
Great question, because I've thought about that as well. I think I would narrow it down and keep the focus on the educational sector since that's where all of my experience has been. But talk about just the opportunity as a leader. Yes, you're the educational leader, you're the instructional leader, all of those things, but you're leading people. To me, the leader's role is to serve the people and try to add value to them in whatever capacity that's going to be. It's okay, you realize your staff needs a pep talk. Let's do that. And so you look at your resources, where is it going to find all of those things? You realize that, some of your seniors are struggling with some things. You bring them into your office. Hey, let's talk about this. How can let's see where we can, solve some problems and get you moving in the right direction. And so it
Mm-hmm.
really becomes, again, goes back to your why. I'm in the business of helping people, adding value to them, but helping them graduate high school, move on to their next immediate steps after that, to go on to college, whatever that step may be. And it's being solution minded to help them find that. And to me, that would be something I could speak on because I've got experience in it. I've seen the highlights of that, if you will, of what
Yeah.
people have done. A case in point, the young lady that I spoke about that graduated in 2006. She was going to be a pediatrician, but realized that's a lot of standardized tests I got to take, and that's just I don't do well at that. So she found another niche, and boy, she's just thriving. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Helping people find a place where they thrive
Yes,
is amazing, huh?
yes, it is.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he was asking me, oh, what's your boy want to do? I go, it's not fair to make a 15, 16-year-old make that decision right now.
Correct.
But yet there's how many folks like getting into first year college? If you go to the first year class, psych class or whatnot, you go, how many of you want to be doctors? Guarantee you most of the class puts up their hand, right? And then this is actually my first year many years ago. The prof goes, okay, everyone put up their hands. It was like 1,000 people in that first year class. Then he goes, okay, now everyone put down their hands except for the front row here. And he goes, you folks in the front row, these are the only people making it into med school, because the stats are abysmal, right?
Yes, they are.
They're absolutely abysmal. I think that was a reality check for a lot of folks. So paths, not on that note, like paths that you didn't anticipate but you took.
Yes,
So you're on this new path right now that you recently took, from principal to to facilitator, trainer, coach.
yes.
What's next for you?
Continue to seek ways to add value to people. Um, whether it's in the educational sector, the nonprofit sector, the faith-based community, or other organizations. It's really, based off what I've learned in leadership. Who can I add value to?
Mm-hmm.
I just recently completed a mastermind course using John Maxwell's The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth for a nonprofit organization that helps people transition from, like they're just coming out of incarceration to life experience, going into the world of work and kind of getting back into life. And it was just awesome to watch their growth through that course because I did a 15-week course. We met a half an hour each week via Zoom because they had some restrictions on, meeting and things like that because they were all in different locations. But just hearing their feedback and their reflections of like how much this course helped them the thought process, some of the strategies to think about, hey, I still got a lot of potential, a lot that I can offer. And that was the message to them, is that it doesn't matter your background, where you've been, you're in a position now to make a different choice going forward,
Mm,
and, really live to reach your potential by growing every day, by seeking those opportunities, or finding the areas where you really need to grow. But it's also using your story to positively impact other people. And that was a
mhm,
lot of those that came out, says, I want to be able to help other people not make the same mistakes I did. I said, that's awesome.
mhm.
And, it was about equipping them with, like I said, those mindsets and skills to be able to do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, a couple more questions for you, Charles. If you reflect on where you are now, and if you had a moment to go back to your 20-year-old self and give him advice, what advice would you give him?
I would say, stay open to opportunities. And the way to do that is to continue to learn, to continue to grow yourself. In my early 20s, I was a young, fiery basketball coach, and I felt like this was the path that I'm supposed to be on. And then after a couple of years, I was like, you know what? It's going to be a different path, And so it made me realize that I can't stay so bent on this path, because it's not the right one for me. I need to be able to go where I'm led, and
Yep.
trust and have that faith that this is the right journey.
Yeah.
And so I would say that is just, don't be so hard headed, if you will, about trying to stay on a certain path thinking this is what is. But when you really, you're in your early 20s, you still got a lot of life,
Yeah.
thankfully and hopefully, but don't make it about you. Like, I'm supposed to be this. Make it about, how can I help people? Because you will become, when you start helping people, and it's opening doors
Yeah.
for other people, the more doors you open for yourself.
It's really interesting when when you talk about that, is being open to where you're being led, right? And selfishly, I'm going to talk about myself, is that I'm not religious. I don't believe in one God. I believe there are gods. I believe there is a God. I believe there is powers beyond me, right? I don't believe I am a man of science, but I also do not believe that somehow all this stuff was truly created because some accidental thing just happened, right? It's too perfect, right? It's way too perfect. And you just look at the human body and how it regulates itself. It's just way too perfect, right? There's got to be something else, some other power, even if we are just in a hologram and someone programmed us, right?
Yeah,
I don't really care.
right.
So all that as a prequel to like just trusting, like when there's a pull, when you're feeling this pull and you're being led somewhere else, to listen to that pull,
Yes.
to listen to that voice, right? Whether it's a higher being or it's your subconscious or somehow your ancestors tapping into your brain. I don't care. You got to listen to that voice that's saying, Charles, this is the path for you.
Yes.
This is your new, this is your new path, right? You just got to listen to that. I, there's, yeah, there's something magical about listening to that frustration when you have frustration, right? Listening to even the emotions that come from it. There's something about that, Charles. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you get that feeling,
No,
but
I
there's
do. I
something
agree.
about
And
it.
I think, how you phrase it, it's the pull. It's the pull, the call, whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it, but it's listening to that and not saying, no, that's not for me. That's not, but your inner self, within your soul, within your mind, whatever is in your heart, it's following that.
Yeah.
Your mind may be saying this,
Yeah.
but your heart and your soul is saying, nah, this is the door that you really want to start pursuing,
Yeah.
and go with it. And so that's the piece that I started listening to better.
Yeah. 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 I said to my wife, this is months ago, I go, honey, there's this word that keeps popping up, like when I'm on walks and when I'm not thinking, it's the word service. And I don't know what it means, right? And it can take many forms, obviously, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to become a monk and go do missionary work or whatever, but there's something about that, and I don't know what it is, but there's this word that keeps popping up in my mind, some sort of service. And so she's like, follow it, you know who knows. So, well,
Yeah,
it's
interesting enough. I
yeah.
mean, serve is my one word this year.
Yeah.
So the school that I just retired from, they have a Hall of Fame committee. The president stepped down. They asked me to step in because I have such a long history there. So I'm going to serve in that capacity. Lynchburg College, or now University of Lynchburg, I got invited to serve on the alumni board there. So I'm serving there. So it's again, I wasn't seeking these things, but these doors opportunity. But that word serve said, you know what, this is where you can serve and where you can add value.
And it's probably because that's what you were doing.
Yes.
The impact you're trying to drive towards, to help people. That's what you were doing. You just probably didn't codify it and use
Right.
that word before, but that's what you were doing. And it's with wisdom, the years
Yes.
where you're like, oh, wait, that is what I was doing. That's why it's coming up. So there's something to it. I'm on this journey too, where, there's this pull and that
Yes.
word comes up and I don't know what it means yet. And I find it also most amazing, like people, it's one thing to, how they make fun of like monks who go up into a mountain and, meditate every day. And you're like, well, easy for you. You got no distractions, right? It's doing this in the wild here, like doing this despite the push and pull of daily life, right? When you have forces that are trying to pull you towards another direction, right? No, it's about the profit. No, it's about the glory and the money, right? Like
Right.
you're still focused despite all those temptations.
Correct.
That's what I find most amazing about great leaders is that they are able to perform despite everything else. So they stay on mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Charles, I always ask everyone this last question. A lot of people find it a doozy, and I don't know why. What's one question I haven't asked you, but I should have?
That is a great question. I guess one question that, it came up a little bit is that, as just as human beings in general, but even as leaders, we all make mistakes, and, I guess the question would be like, what would be, some of the biggest lessons you've learned from some of your mistakes?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it goes back to like the example that I used before is that sometimes, we lose sight of our why in the minutia of everything that we're doing. And you become a manager of tasks versus being a leader. And it's making sure the mistake was I started becoming manager of tasks again, which are tasks you have to do, but that's not leadership. That's just managing tasks and trying to stick to a process that may be outdated or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the big lesson was that keep your North Star your North Star. Keep focused on your why. You still got tasks you need to do, but is what you're doing, is that going to move you closer to your why? Is it going to move you closer to those goals that you're trying to achieve? Is it going to add value to those people that you're doing
Mm-hmm.
by keeping your focus on the people that you're there to serve and not get so caught up in the minutia of things that you have to do, the mundane stuff you have to do anyway?
Yeah.
So I guess that would be the one thing.
Well, thank you for that reminder to me as well as to everyone else out there. It's easy to get caught up in all the minutia,
Yes.
right? But like we were saying, it's being a leader despite all the noise and all the push and pull around you.
Absolutely.
Remember your why.
Exactly. It's going to help you not only just in the times of celebration when things are going well, but when things get really tough, it's keeping focus. Because I've had several tough situations we gotten through in the school community I'm in, and it's just the focus on we're in the kid business. What decisions can I make that's going to move things forward and not get so caught up in all the extra noise that I've got no control over.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Charles, thank you very much for joining me today. It was really quick.
Yeah, it was.
30
Thank you,
minutes.
David. I greatly appreciate this opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're a great speaker, sir. You should get your own podcast. Honestly, get your own podcast going and do that TED Talk that you're thinking about.
Yeah, they're on that bucket list, so we'll work toward it.
Well, we'll kick that bucket.
Yep.
Spill it.
Yep, I appreciate it.
Impact the world in a different way.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. Well, have a good day, my friend. We'll
Thank you. You as well.
All right. That's a wrap on this episode of the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I'm David Fung, and my mission is to help leaders grow, lead with impact, and build thriving teams. If you found this valuable, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow leader. Until next time, keep leading with purpose.